Hey guys, Jordan Bellinger here. I have Dane with me at Lender's Choice Credit Repair, and kind of a cool concept of the credit repair, how he does it. So I wanted to bring him in and talk to you guys. I have some questions for him. This is a long form, so we're just talking. Not going to be edited. I do have a couple questions, and we'll just kind of see where things go. So, tell us a little bit of how your business is set up. I know one of the things that kind of stood out to me when you talked. Oh, and the owners that own Coldwell Banker Apex actually bought into his company. Mm-hmm. So your Coldwell Banker Apex doesn't own it, but the owners that own Coldwell Banker Apex also own a part of Lender's Choice, and so we're kind of lockstep right now, and we have some pretty cool things for our clients. And anyways, what I was going to say is the thing that stood out to me is that you're not trying to get everyone to an 800 plus credit score. You're working to get them to qualify for a loan, mm-hmm. and so it's a very focused what you're doing in your business. So talk to us a little bit about what your company does. And
this kind of started because my dad was a loan officer for a long time, and he just started helping his clients with credit kind of on the side. You know, he came across some people that were close, and so he started learning more about it, and just to be a resource, he started helping them. And then next thing you know, he's helping every loan officer in his office, and then that became his full-time job that he did for 20 years. So that's how I got into it. And so just working with so many different loan officers and realtors, we kind of felt like we were more of a B2B, like we were working directly in what would benefit you. Yeah. Obviously, a byproduct is helping a client, but we thought in those terms of what would a realtor or a loan officer want? Well, we want to get them qualified as quick as possible. That's what people want. People want, if I got 4 months until I got to be out of my lease or my house that's about to sell, I need to get there as quick as possible. I don't necessarily need a perfect credit score. If that's their goal, then we can do that. But most of the time, it's like, I need to get to a 640. I got 3 months go. And so that's how we've kind of designed our program. That's sort of our niche, is just let's get you to whatever target, that is that you're looking to get to. We can always come back later and go for higher scores. Yeah. But the quicker we can get to that point, everybody wins.
Cool. So when people buy a house, I know mortgage debt is different than other debt. Mm-hmm. When you have mortgage debt, do the credit scores go up even more typically?
Well, having a mortgage on your credit report, yes.
That's a positive. So you're getting them qualified, and then they have another factor there. Does that help their credit score in general?
It is. And they actually sort of, even though a mortgage is an installment loan, they still kind of put it in its own category. So you have revolving accounts like credit cards, installment loans like a student loan or an auto loan, and then a mortgage. And so they kind of put that almost in its own category, even though it's still an installment loan. And so having a mortgage on your credit report is very good for your scores. The debt itself isn't super, it's not good for your scores. It's just that debt like that doesn't affect your scores like a credit card. So I always say you could have hundreds of thousands of dollars in installment debt, mortgage, student loans, auto loans, and still have very good scores. But if you had a $200 credit card that was maxed out, your scores are going to drop big time. And so the installment debt just doesn't affect you like revolving debt does. So if you get a house, you're not going to see your scores go down like if you maxed out a credit card, or if you went to Nebraska Furniture Mart or finance some things, your scores would go down for a while.
So I've been, and we talked about this because when you guys kind of partnered with Apex, you offered you offered to look at our credit, and my credit's good, and I've kind of been a credit hacker since I could get credit, which I've always, and I'm fortunate enough to, for whatever reason, I was nerdy enough to be interested in something like that. But so it helps, and you still gave me some advice that helping me get it even higher. But I don't know where I was going with that. Credit is, I don't know where I was going with that. I'll go back to my question. So I've been a credit hacker, and I still learn things, and one of the things that like the different types of loans, like credit cards and like that. That's something I've known for a while, is that, if you have a $200 credit card maxed out, or you have $200 on a $10,000 credit card, that's a huge difference. It's still $200.
Yeah.
But it's
and so what I call that is just credit score management, because you can just move things around. You still have the same debt, but there's just ways to kind of manipulate or to move things around that will cause your scores to go up. And so that's one thing that we help a lot of people with. And just kind of to piggyback off of what you were saying as far as your stuff goes, you have very good credit. We help a lot of people in that situation who are already good to qualify for a house, but maybe they want to go conventional or get the best possible rate. And so they're usually already have good payment history. All their balances are low, and it's like, what else over and above that can be done? And so that's where it's fun for me to to get in there and be creative and find little ways to do things, because it's not, those aren't all we help is the bad credit to qualifying. That's a good bit of it, but a lot of it is good to great kind of thing.
Oh yeah. Well, and the thing is with that buying a house, being able to afford to buy a house, like maybe you can afford it, but if your credit isn't good enough, no one's going to give you a loan. And if you can buy a house, it's one of the things that's cool. People are like, oh, why can't I just keep renting? I was like, you can keep renting, but you're when you buy a house, you're locking in your rent for 30 years most of the time. And so if you think about, like, I remember when I was renting, it went from 650 up to 1,800 in the period of time. I rented way too long. I shouldn't have. And then my wife came along. She's like, we're buying a house. Like, yes, ma'am. But you look at that, and that wasn't a ton of time. It went from 600 to, and it wasn't the same apartment, but it went from 600 to 1,800, and just the cost of living. Well, if I would have got a mortgage at 600, which I probably wouldn't have, but if you did, whatever that number is, 2,000, like, it won't really go up unless you want it to go up. If you refi or things like that. And then what was it? Was it 30 something times? Do you remember that? What was
the average
that?
net worth of somebody who is a homeowner versus a renter is 30 times
That's
greater.
huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
And now with rates being as low as they are,
It's free money.
it really is. I mean, to get, I talked to a loan officer yesterday that got somebody done at a 2.5. I literally like choked. Like, I couldn't believe that they've gotten so low. And so now more than ever, buying versus renting is sort of a no-brainer because it's so much better of an investment.
Yeah.
And
if you look around North Texas, just the price of homes, like the home that I grew up in or one of the homes I grew up in, my parents bought for $91,000 or something right around there in Frisco. That home's worth over $300,000 today. That was 91 to 2020. That's a long time, but not a long time. And so you go, oh, houses are, now we look at houses that are, $400,000. You're like, oh, it's an entry level house. And you're like, oh, it can't possibly go up. Well, it probably will. I mean, these normal homes. I remember when I sold my first over $1 million house, and my business partner, she's like, oh, wow, it took me so long to sell $1 million house. Like, I was so many years into my career at that time, and you're only a few. And I said, $1 million home's not what $1 million home was in the 90s. And so we're going to be saying the same thing about all this. I had a client say, oh, I told myself I'd never buy a house over $300,000, and he's a good client of mine. And I said, well, did you consider inflation?
Yeah.
And he's like,
oh,
no.
Yeah.
And he bought over a $300,000 house at that point. But anyways, it gives you a lot of power, and and you can even buy a house, pay down the loan, house goes up in value, refinance it, pull cash out, pay off debt, pay off credit cards. I mean, it's powerful. You can sell it and make money. Let me pull up some of my questions. So what credit do you need to get a house loan?
Well,
I know it's a loaded question.
Well, yeah, it just, it changes a lot because, 580, for a long time was the minimum score. And then going into this year with everything that happened, a lot of the credit scoring requirements increased. Mm-hmm. So it went from a 580 in some cases up to a 640.
Yeah.
Things were kind of sort of getting better a little bit, and they were lowering that back down some. But then I hear the other day from a loan officer that they're back up, they're wanting to increase credit scores again. So, a good rule of thumb is just being above a 640,
okay.
Because you're probably going to be fine no matter the conditions. But there are a lot of times where you could do a 580 or 600 and still be able to get approved. The difference, though, in the rate and what you'll pay is significant. So if you have the time to wait a little bit longer and just do some things to improve your credit, it will save you thousands. So when people get approved at a 580,
thousands in what time period?
Oh, a pretty short time period. I mean, you're talking about, I saw somebody the other day it was the difference between like a 2.8 and a 3.1. And I want to say it was like $100 something a month on their payment.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's significant. So quickly, thousands of dollars a year, depending on the rate that you get. And if you're at a 580 right now, compared to what you could get, obviously 2.5 now is an option. I guess if you're a 740 or above, that's definitely thousands of dollars in just a couple of years.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's what I was trying to get a read on, is are they saving thousands in, the
hundreds
time
a
alone,
month,
or
thousands a year?
I mean, that's a significant amount of money. What are the most common things that you see come up that are, I don't know if easy fixes are the right thing, but what are the common, like, maybe misconceptions that people just don't
Well, a lot of people don't have a credit card. I got to blame Dave Ramsey a little bit for that. You kind of get half in, half out of one of his programs, and you're reading the books, and it's exciting. And
buy a house cash.
Yeah, and the thought of no debt is exciting. And people get tired of dealing with that, and so they're kind of, again, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So it's like no credit cards, but I still have a car payment. And so my insurance rates are high, my auto interest rate is high, but I don't have a credit card. Well, having a credit card is so important to having a good credit score. It's nearly impossible to have a good credit score with 0 credit cards at all. And so they help build your score more than anything else can. And so I see a lot of people with no credit card, and so I say, utilization is a big percentage of your score. If you have maxed out credit cards, you have 0 utilization, so that can cost you over 100 points. Not having a credit card is nearly the same thing. You have no available utilization. So just opening up a credit card is a big tip that a lot of people are like, I didn't realize it would be that easy to get qualified. That sometimes is all that needed to be done was just open up a credit card. Other than that, usually it's not having enough credit. Obviously, we help with any derogatory things, medical bills and things like that are very possible to get off between finding violations in one of the laws or doing a settlement for deletion, those types of things. But one thing that we always caution against is just kind of blindly paying off a collection, because that could do more damage than good.
So blindly paying off a collection, and then the other thing that I wanted you to talk about is, and you mentioned this, like, whoa, so some creditors will re-up. Talk about they'll I don't know, something happens and they re-up it, but it's illegal.
Yeah, re-aging the debt. And so this is really common, and so most people just don't. It
and
happens
they,
to
and they
a
try
lot
to
of
correct
people.
your own, because if I was trying, again, fortunately, I was nerdy about it, and it's always been okay. But that's one of the things I was shocked to hear from you, is that, because if I'm kind of a DIYer for a lot of things, like, I can do it, but that's one of the things I would have done and be like, oh no, I need to pay it. So.
Yeah. So when you look at the negative accounts, most people, you know that an account's going to stay on your credit report for 7 years.
Okay.
But what most people don't realize, 7 years from what? If you ask somebody 7 years, how long? 7 years from the date the account was opened. Some people think that. Some people think when the account was closed. They don't know, but just 7 years. So the recency of a negative account is a big factor in how much it impacts your score. So if a negative account happened last month, that's a big deal. If it happened 4 or 5 years ago, it hurts your score less and less as time goes by. And so what a lot of collection companies are known for doing is re-aging a debt, or making the date, it's the date of first delinquency. So if I had a credit card and I was 30 days late, and then it went 60, 90, 120, 150, charged off, that from when it went 30 days late, that's going to be the 7-year time frame. So if that happened in 2013 or 14, and I'm close to that falling off, if they re-age that debt and all of a sudden it says 2020, well, my scores are going to drop, but it's also going to stay on my credit report a lot longer. And so the reason why they do that is because in Texas, the statute of limitations is 4 years. After 4 years, they can't sue you over a debt anymore, but it'll stay on your credit report another 3. And so if you're wanting to buy a house or a car, and then all of a sudden they re-age that, your scores drop, what are you going to do? You're more likely to pay it, because now it's become a problem again. If it's 6 years old and going to fall off soon and it's barely hurting your credit, you're like, that's
because I had that when we were buying our house. We were there was some AT&T bill that was my wife was like co-signer on from years and years ago, and I was talking to our lender. He's like, don't worry about it. I'm like, it was $200. I was just going to pay it. I was like, yeah, whatever. Like, we're buying a house. Like, he's like, don't do that. And I was like, really? He goes, it doesn't make any difference.
So
he goes, it might be 1 point in your credit score.
Yeah, it just won't. It won't ever help. Paying off a collection is never going to help, but it could hurt the scores. And the reason why is because it's the date of first delinquency is the date that is supposed to impact, how long it stays on your credit report and how recent or how aged it is. But when you make a payment on a collection, they a lot of times will re-age it. They call it the date of last activity.
Is that, can they do that?
Well, the date of last activity or the date of first delinquency is what it is, but it just happens. It's just the way that credit reporting works. The format's called Metro 2, which is the way that the creditors send the data to the credit bureaus and how it reports. And so it just happens a lot of times that you pay off a collection. It's written as the date of last activity on a credit report. You wouldn't see date of first delinquency. You'd see date of last activity.
Okay.
But when you make a payment on a collection, a lot of times they'll just update that day. And so it'll look like a brand new collection. And so what we try to do when the account itself is very negative is we try to get the entire account off by using that violation, because they're not supposed to do that. Worst case scenario, we just get it fixed, because if you get that date back to what it's supposed to be, the scores go up, you're good to go.
Okay.
And so that would be kind of the plan B.
And that's such a niche thing. I mean, obviously that's why you're an expert in what it is, but that's such a niche thing that like I wouldn't possibly expect to know that.
No, there's no way.
The credit. Well, all these agencies that are trying to collect the debt are probably, they know that. They know that you're. I don't even know that. I was like a credit hacker for years.
Yeah, they don't tell you. They don't want you to necessarily know that. There's no incentives to pay off a collection. Except for you won't get sued. There's just no incentives unless they agree to delete it. And so when I mentioned, blindly paying off a collection, it's kind of important, because there are certain circumstances where you can call this company and you can say, I will pay X amount if you will put in writing that you'll remove it from my credit report if I do. So there are ways to pay for delete or settle for delete and be able to get it removed from the credit report, but you have to know that, and you have to make that very clear on the phone call, because if you just pay it and assume, they're not going to do it. And then once you've paid, there now is you have no leverage to get them to delete it from the credit report. If you go back after the fact, they're not going to do it. Yeah. And so it's not common knowledge. I try to kind of promote that more than anything, because I just see people spend thousands and thousands only to find out that their scores didn't go up. They're going to stay on the credit report, all those things. And so there's just other ways of getting the job done. It seems logical. The first thing you want to do is go pay off old debt if you're trying to improve your scores. But the best thing you could do is focus on the open accounts that you have right now. Make sure those are paid on time. Make sure the balances are low. And then, if you can do a settlement for deletion, or if you feel like there's a violation that credit repair can help with, get off the negative you can get off, but focus on building positive.
So another thing you talked about, I think you talked about this, is you have business owners that have business debt in their name, I think, and trying to get it in, because I have some business owners that they have a hard time qualifying because they have a huge amount of debt for their business, but it's positive debt. They're making money on this debt. So it's not, before we get into that, so let's hold that for a second. Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey is something that I think it's a great starting point, but the thing is, let's say you're buying a $200,000 house, and you have $200,000 cash, you can go buy that house for $200,000, or you can finance it probably 2.5% or 3%, whatever you qualify for, and you can put 20% down, and then you can take that other $160,000 and put it into other investments. So now you're making money on paying down your mortgage. You're making money on that property going up in value. You're making money on that other $160,000 that you have in other investments. So then you're putting investments in all these places versus having it in one place. And you don't make money on the house until you sell it, right? So if you had that $160,000 and you had it in the stock market or whatever other investments you want to do, like an investment home, you're making money multiple places. So it doesn't make sense to pay cash right now with interest rates the way they are. Now, if they're 14%, as they were in 30, 40 years ago, then that would be a different conversation. But when they're 2 or 3%, it's free money. Like I know we financed a car at like 0.9. I'm like, that's free money. Like like, how do you? I mean, not that we had the cash sitting around to do that, but at 0.9, how do you not do? Like, how do you not finance at that rate? So, Dave Ramsey is something, and I every year I have at least a few people that are like, oh, I have to save down 20%. I'm like, no, you don't. You don't need to save 20% because Dave Ramsey said you don't have to pay cash, because by the time you're saving that 20%, by the time you're saving that cash to buy the house, those houses are going to be twice as what they cost before. I mean, and so it doesn't make sense. And I have one person that I've talked to really in depth about this, and they're set on the Dave Ramsey thing. And I'm like, let me run some scenarios. I had a client buy a house at $125,000. This was years ago. It was in an area where the prices weren't super high. Bought it at $125,000. We sold it, I think, a year and a half or 2 years later, and he walked away with like $30,000 in cash. You're talking, when he sold it, he paid my commissions, he paid the other buyer's commissions, which is pretty typical. He paid all his closing costs, and he had cash. It might have been more than that, like $30,000. And you divide that out by however many months, like it was hundreds of dollars a month that he was making by buying that house when he did. And he wasn't even buying the house that he really wanted. The second house he bought, they really wanted. It was gorgeous. It was in the area they really wanted to be. It was in the, there was just so many things about the second house that were like, it was very much him versus the first one. But he knew. He goes, I got to buy a house. Got to build this equity. And that's what he did. And he didn't put 20% down.
No.
And so that's why, anyway, so it's just, I could go on a long tangent on that.
You could do the math and see that if you're just an average American with coming out of college with the average rent, what the average person is making income-wise out of college, and all the bills that they're going to have, student loans and all the rest, you're just likely not going to be able to buy a house in your 20s if you do the Dave Ramsey way all the way through, where you're also on the side, by the way, saving money to buy a car cash. Yeah, you're just not going to do it. Whereas I try to speak from my own experience, because there's a lot of people that give advice that, are just talking, but they aren't living it, or, and so I try to give advice from my own experience. My wife and I bought our first house at 23, sold it 3 years later, made 90 after all the realtor fees and everything. So at 26 years old, we got to invest that to continue to move up. There's just no way if we would have been all in Dave Ramsey, there's just no way. It wasn't going to happen.
It's a massive amount of cash. And I see this all the time. I had clients, because I ran these numbers for this person that I know, and another client, they made $100,000 after 10 years. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's an enormous amount of money. And so Tiff and I, my wife, we both grew up in Frisco, and we both loved downtown Frisco. We're in Salina now. We love Salina, but we're in Frisco, and we were having a conversation one day. We were driving around downtown Frisco, and all the downtown stuff, when we were actively shopping a couple years ago, all around $300,000, and it needed work. And we said, oh, yeah, I almost bought a house down here when they were in the hundreds. Mm-hmm. She's like, oh, I did too. I'm like, could you imagine the wealth that we would have had, or the net worth we would have had, if we met and got married owning 2 homes that are worth double, probably more, because we would have both been updating them. Mm-hmm. The wealth that we would have had.
The area that I live in Frisco, everybody in this neighborhood in Frisco bought their house when they were built in 2005, 2004. Okay. They were all in the 4s. Yeah. Every single house in that area are selling for mid-8s right now. Yeah. And they're all just like as happy. They know,
And so, that was one of the, it was just like, it is what it is. Anyways, I was like, we should have got together way sooner, because we would have been much further along with our lives. Not that we're not in a good spot. We love where we are, but it was just like, it was a slap in the face. And it was before we were kind of thinking about buying, and we're like, we got to buy. Like, the cheapest time to buy is yesterday.
But year by year, it's a good point that you're saying that, especially on the Frisco thing, because me and my wife were watching, as we were looking, and year by year, if you're in this price range, you wait 1 year, you will not, those houses that you were seeing in that price range will not be there anymore. You're going to have to go up nearly 100 to be able to get that same house. I mean, it's kind of discouraging. You got to get in quickly, or else it's just going to keep, and like you said earlier, kind of with the Dave Ramsey thing, you're saving money. You're like, okay. And then it's almost beating what you can,
Yeah. So what typically happens is you can't outsave, for most people, and we're talking 99% of people, or 90% of people probably, you can't outsave the inflation. It's like if you have your money in a savings account, your money's going down in value. And because I don't know what saving accounts are getting, but they're not significant. And so houses, like right now, houses year over year are up like 15%, which is bonkers. It won't stay that way, but it's a huge number. And so if you bought a house today versus 365 days from today, 365 days ago, that house would be $15,000 more. So for a $300,000 house, that's $45,000, right?
Yeah.
$45,000. Well, did you say $45,000? No, probably not. And anyway, so it's, moving forward from today, interest rates will probably go up. 1% of interest rate is equivalent on a $300,000 house, about $30,000, which is a lot of money. And then you take that $300,000 house and you go, let's say it goes up, let's say it goes up 5%, which is super low. So then you're looking at another $15,000 over, right? Yeah, for $300,000. Mm-hmm. So your interest rate goes up by 1%. So your house is the $300,000 house is now costing you equivalent of $330,000, plus the house went up 5% a year. You're now looking at, and this is just 1 year from now, you're now looking at, what's it, 45, so $345,000 house payment in a year versus now. And that's assuming interest rates go up. But it's just crazy. And so when everyone's on that Dave Ramsey, and depending on where you are in life, if you're retiring and you're doing that, I understand trying to get your payments low, trying to not have to have payments. I get that. Yeah. But for the majority of people, it does not make sense to buy a house cash, unless you just have it sitting around and you need that cash to sit somewhere that's relatively safe, because that's another conversation as well. But, anyway, so it's insane,
I agree 100%.
That people want to wait.
There's just, I mean, Dave Ramsey's a big math guy. He always talks about the numbers, and he's a numbers guy. Run the numbers. Do what does the average person make out of college? What does the average person pay in student loan debt monthly? All the things, and then how much money am I going to have to be saving monthly to be able to pay a car cash like Dave Ramsey suggests that you do? And as soon as you do buy that car cash, whether it's $8,000 or 10, if you're going to go, with the type of car that Dave Ramsey would say buy cash, you got to start saving again, because it's not going to be too long until you're going to have to get another one. So where is the money going to come from in your 20s to be able to save, even to put 3.5% down on a house or 3% down on a house? It's just not, you're not going to get to do it. So when you do kind of sort of my plan, which is not, anything special, it's just what you do. Anybody who buys a house young, you use your credit, you get to a house as quick as you can. You finance the car at 0.9% because I can do better with that money over here, and a horrible investment would make better than 0.9%. Get into a house as quick as possible, and if you just put those two journeys side by side, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's one of the I hate to say regrets, because it's not really regrets, it's learning, and my learning helps the people that I talk to and interact with, but is not buying a house sooner. Because I had a salary, I had very little debt, and I kept buying toys. I had motorcycles and a car, and I'm like, my life is great. And it was, but when looking back, I'm like, oh my God, the wealth that I could have had. We're not talking a huge amount of money, but we're talking about significantly more ahead than where we are now. If I just would have bought a house, and it's so easy. And I remember I would move multiple times in apartments because I'd get mad. They'd want to up my rent, and I'd get mad and frustrated. I'm like, whatever, screw y'all, I'm going somewhere else. And I would, and it would cost me to move. And the nice thing is because I have people ask me about renting, and I was like, the best thing is your rent never goes up unless you want it to. And secondly, you never get kicked out. You never get priced out. You never get, I'm not renewing your lease. I mean, it's your house to do what you want with, for the most part. And so, yeah, if you have the money and you can buy a house, buy a house. The other thing I wanted to ask is, how do you charge your clients? Like, how does that work? Because I know credit repair companies, it's all over the place.
It is. It's really all over the place. And so the best way I like to describe it, because this is such a unique thing that we do, as far as, I always use an example from a real estate side. What if you knocked on someone's door and you said, I can sell your house in the next 30 days. You're going to pay the 6%, but I can sell your house in the next 30 days. And they say, okay. And then you don't, but I still get the commission anyway. Well, credit repair results vary depending on the situation, but you're still paying in a lot of cases, depending on who you hire, for their time to attempt to help you.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people get frustrated by that. Some people call that a scam. Like, I didn't get what I paid for. And so what we decided to do, there's just a few companies that do this, is instead of charging for our time, whether that be pay us all up front or pay us a monthly fee, we charge per account we get deleted. So all the consultation, all the coaching on everything that the client can do is free. Anything other than us getting accounts removed is free, and so they're only paying for what gets deleted after it gets deleted, and so it's results based. It's almost like, I give the attorney analogy. There's two types of pricing with attorneys. You can pay that big retainer, and then hourly, whatever they charge, $300, $500 an hour, and you're paying for their time. So whether they win your case or lose, you didn't pay for a win or lose. They represented you, and they did the best they could. And so sometimes you get off the hook for whatever you did. Sometimes you get the sentence reduced, and sometimes you just got to serve your time. And so, but there are attorneys that charge if they win the case. You're only paying if we win the case, or if we win a settlement, or whatever the case may be. So ours would be something more like that. Like, if you're not getting results, if you're not getting results, you're not paying.
So also, your company is now attorney backed. What does that mean? That was new to me as well.
Yeah, so we were talking earlier about re-aging the debt, and we were kind of just talking about it normal, because you and I know that these violations are just common in this industry. Well, a lot of people kind of see that as hard to believe, that they do these things like re-age the debt, and there's a lot of other violations that happen that are just very common in credit reporting. And so just finding those, it's not always easy to get them fixed, to get them to delete the account or correct the account. It's like pulling teeth dealing with the credit bureaus, especially this year, because just with COVID, a lot of people are having issues, mortgages reporting late because they did the forbearance, all kinds of things.
Okay.
By the way, the credit bureaus are number one company in complaints with the CFPB. No other company in the United States has more complaints than the credit bureaus do. So they're not exactly on our side as far as making sure everything's done right and correct. And they have so many people disputing, it's just impossible to keep up with. And so if you're a credit repair company like we have been, and like most companies are, you're doing all this work on the client's behalf. Like you said, you're do it yourself. You would learn how to do it. Well, we're basically like the accountant. You could do your own taxes, or you could have someone do it for you. But we can only go as far as the consumer can go. With an attorney, though, it's a much more aggressive approach when the attorney sends a letter with an attorney letterhead pointing out the specific violations. It's a more aggressive approach, and it gets their attention a lot more, especially with collection companies and the bureaus. I always say in a big sea of consumer dispute letters, whether it's credit repair
when you
company,
get an attorney one, it highly
stands out.
prioritized.
And it shows that you're for real. I always give this example. I have people call me all the time, and they've had identity theft. Somebody's opened up something in their name. First thing I always say do is file a police report. You can quickly find out who's for real and who's not, because some people don't want to do that. And it's interesting. Sometimes it's because maybe they had something to do with it, but sometimes it might have been a family member. I had one, it was like an older couple, and their grandson opened something, and they didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
I said, I get it, but that's what would need to happen. There are people, though, that go, okay, done, and they go get a police report. Well, that's just going to show a lot more credibility and a lot more seriousness in that something actually happened. So an attorney helping to clear something up on the credit report, it's just going to get more attention, and it's more of an aggressive approach. And so, in the past, we work with attorneys, here in a few other areas that we've referred clients to, but attorneys aren't cheap,
No.
And so for us to have to refer that out on a kind of a case-by-case basis, first of all, the very first thing we talked about when we started this was we're trying to get people into a house. And how do those attorneys...
sometimes you're on a timeline.
Exactly.
Like sometimes your rent's coming, our lease is, expiring here. So we need to buy it. We need to be under contract here, and we need to get the credit repaired.
Yeah.
And so having that short line to a solution through an attorney is, I imagine, pretty helpful.
It is. But when you deal with an outside attorney, number one, a lot of the ways they get paid is if they go settle a debt with a collection company. And so it's just not going to be always as quick. And that attorney's priority is not necessarily what ours, yours, and the client's is. They're, the longer this takes, the more money they make, sort of thing. And so it just wasn't always the best fit for the client's needs or goal. I want to buy a house tomorrow. Because I might say, look, there's serious violations on your credit report. You could win. It's $1,000 per violation. And so you can win money. They're like, I just want to buy a house. Like, I don't want to. Yeah. And so now having the in-house attorney that aligns with what we're trying to do, yes. Number one, it's a whole heck of a lot cheaper. It's just a part of our program. But also, our goal is not to take the credit bureaus or a collection company to court or settle. Our goal is to get it handled so we can move forward as quick as possible. Yeah. And so for that reason, I almost want to say that makes us one of a kind, because we are so niche in this market. And now that we have the attorney-backed program, that there's just not many companies that have that option, but specifically to just get the process moving quicker.
And that's why your company's named Lender's Choice, is because it's specifically to get you approved for a loan. Like it's such a specific need, which why it makes sense that, Apex owners bought into your company, is because it's like, this makes sense. Like and there's a lot of people out there that credit is one of those things. It's kind of a, what's the word? People don't want to talk about it. It's just because they feel bad about it. It's one of those, I don't know, there's some word that I'm trying to think of, but it doesn't really matter. It's one of those things that if you have good credit, like I guess you talk about it a little bit, but if you have bad credit, it's embarrassing. Yeah. Like it's, when I got into real estate, I racked up some debt, my credit score went down, and my credit score's typically been up, and I was like, oh, this is horrible, this is embarrassing. But it's, and a lot of times I've met people that don't have credit. Like they don't have any credit at all. And I mean, what are your solutions for that? Like what?
Yeah, so it takes, by the way, if you have a zero credit score because you have no credit, it takes 6 months to register a FICO score. So the best thing you could do is go get a secured credit card. And
secured credit card, you give them $500 and they give you $500 credit.
And you could even go down to $200-$300. Okay. So it's not such a. Some people ask me, should I do like $1,500? You don't have to type that much money. It's just about opening a credit card. Okay. It's just about having the account. Yeah. And so that's the main thing, just to get going. And you want to do that as soon as possible because it's going to take 6 months to register a score. And so I always say, I'll give you a couple examples of why credit cards are the best way to improve your scores versus why wouldn't I just go get maybe a loan with the bank or something like that.
That was the first thing I did. Is I got I think it was like a Best Buy credit card or something. Yeah. Because Best Buy, I think they'll approve everyone at a certain amount, because I mean, maybe not everyone, but it was just like, you know, I had not okay income, and they just like, oh, you want to buy that, you know, widget? Like, okay, we'll approve you.
So this is where I kind of sort of lean the Dave Ramsey way. And so what I would challenge on a specific store card is, like, not to be funny here, but I have some people who come into our program, the only thing they have on their credit report is like a Victoria's Secret card. Mm-hmm. So guess what I have to tell them to go do? Use the card. Yeah. At that place, because that's the only place they can use it. Versus if you get a secured credit card or a gas card or something like that, you're buying things that you're going to be buying anyway. And that's how I convince the Dave Ramsey fans to get a credit card is, look, you are about to swipe that debit card at the gas station or at the grocery store anyway. Use this card, build your credit. You can always cancel it after you get in your house if you want to. I wouldn't recommend that, but you can. It's just a tool to get you. And so the difference between a Best Buy card and a card that you can use anywhere is you got to go to Best Buy, you know, and you got to spend money there. Versus, because you want there to be activity on the card, versus using a card that can be used anywhere. You know, you're going to be getting things you're going to be buying anyway, and then just kind of taking it to the next step. Once you improve your credit and you can get those cash back cards, well, then all of a sudden you're making money off your good credit. You know, if you use a card on everything you were going to buy anyway, and you get 1 to 5% cash back, and then you invest that money. Like, that's literally a game changer. I've done this, and I'm going to start putting it out there and showing for the people that care. You kind of talked about, you know, if you have good credit, it's almost like bragging, but the amount of money that I've been able to invest just off of cash back. These are things I was going to buy anyway, gas, groceries, anything I can use a credit card for, I use it, pay it off, take that money and invest it. Because if you just get the $100 check or the $60 check or whatever, like, it's not that much. When you invest it, it's a big deal. Yeah. And so that's using money you were going to spend anyway. It's free money. You invest it and it turns into
so we should talk about that offline too, because I don't have many cashback cards. I have a lot of points cards. Mm-hmm. And so I used to travel a lot before I got into real estate, and I'd put it all on credit cards and then I'll expense it. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the things that helped me build my credit so much, is because these companies thought I was spending, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars a month of my money on travel, and it wasn't my money; it was expensed money, and so I just put it all on credit, and so, and then I paid it off, and so, so me and my wife turned 30 a few years ago. It was also our first year anniversary. I was like, let's go out. So we're gonna go, like, really go out. So we went to New York. We stayed at the Ritz-Carlton, looking over the park. It was kind of a corner thing, so you kind of saw the park from the window. But it was the Ritz-Carlton, one of the more expensive Ritz-Carltons. We had a nice room. We paid for the rooms for, I think, 3 nights. We paid for flights. In the rooms, I looked up when we were there, were $3,500 a night, all on points. Yeah. And so it was just such a cool experience, because I don't know where I possibly would need to be okay with spending $3,500 a night. I'm not saying I wouldn't, but I would have to be at a significantly different place than I am now, because that is a lot of money. Yeah. I mean, you could stay in places for a month for that amount of money. And so, but it was such a wonderful experience, and it was because I knew how to use these cards. I knew what cards got good points. I knew what points were valuable. I knew how they could transfer, and so I transferred all to Marriott, which is a Ritz-Carlton, and so and it was hundreds of thousands of points, but it was such a cool experience. And so I didn't get cash back, but it was we'll never forget that. It was our 30th birthday, and it was our first year anniversary. We'll never forget that trip. Yeah. And that would have cost us, man, over $10,000 on just flights and room.
Definitely. Yeah. So before, my wife and I have a 1-year-old. Before that, we traveled all over the place. And so I have the American Express, or the, she has American Express Platinum. I have the...
Make sure you don't show the number.
Yeah, no, I won't show it. It's on the back. But the American Airlines card. Okay. And so we traveled all over the place using that. And then when my son was born, you know, priorities kind of shifted a little bit. And my wife went to Baylor, huge Baylor fan. And, you know, I'm already starting to think about, man, I got a long time, but my goal now is to use cash back to pay for college. I think I might be the first person to ever do that, but I'll have to show you how much in this short time that I've already been able to put aside and invest, especially this year. It's been easier with the market, but, just using cash back, and luckily,
and it's
my
free
business,
money. Yeah, it's lit, and it's not even saying like it's a low interest loan. It's free money. It's money that you're going to spend anywhere. And if you were paying $100 cash, it's $100 cash gone. If you're paying $100 in a card, you're getting points or money or whatnot. The other thing, and I wanted to bounce off of that, that I was going to ask you is, what are you going to do with your 1-year-old to set them up for good credit? Because I know some parents will add their kids on and like basically start their credit before they're 18. Because you have to be 18 to get a card or anything like that. How does that work?
I want to say there's some that you can do
credit?
at 16. I think
Okay.
you can get. I think you can get a card. I know there's some 16-year-olds that have gas cards.
Is there a
and things like
strategy that you can do where you're starting your kids' credit history off earlier? Obviously, you're going to teach them a lot of these things, and a lot of it's just education. So it's a lot about knowing enough, because everyone needs to be educated about credit. You don't need to be an expert in it, but you need to really understand it because it's powerful. The reason we got that 0.9% interest, again, free money, 0.9% interest on a really nice car, is because we have good credit histories. And even when my wife and I got together, she didn't care about credit, but she had decent credit. And I was like, let's make it better. We're going to add you to this card. We're going to add you to this card. Because she had, I think she had a couple cards, and it was like $1,000 worth of credit, like access, right? And I think they were both paid off. But I was like, well, let's add you to this one that has a $10,000 availability. Well, her credit went up. I mean, it launched up because it's like, oh, she can be trusted with it. And I knew what cards would actually go to her credit, because sometimes when I add her as an authorized user on some cards, it won't show up. But on other ones, it'll show up as like it's her card just as it is mine. And there's negatives to that too, so you really have to trust the person. But we kind of hacked her credit as well when we got together. But now I'm thinking, when we have kids, what are we going to do that can... what are we going to do that can kind of set them up for success in addition to educating them?
Yeah. So this is my plan, and this is exactly what my dad did for me. Like I said, he was in this industry for a long time, so I luckily have never had, any sort of issues. This has always been a big focal point on our end. And so, just like you added your wife as an authorized user, you would add your son or daughter as an authorized user. And then as soon as they're old enough to get their own card in their name, you want to get them a card in their own name, because the way that it's scored, your wife scores, I did the same thing with my wife, but it's different having your own card versus an authorized user account. So you'd want to get them added as an authorized user, and then you will get them their own card, and whether you want to give them that card or not,
or you want to put charge on it.
Exactly. So I didn't completely understand how credit cards work when I first got my own first card. And so, you can learn some hard lessons that way if you don't know how it works. And so a lot of parents might just, I don't want to, it'll end up being a bad thing. And so that's the good thing. You don't have to necessarily give, like when you added, I make this joke all the time, when I added my wife as an authorized user to some of my cards, I didn't give her own copy of that card. Yeah. It was just to build credit. And so, you start with
a couple of them she never got.
Exactly.
There's one of them that we use. We use our Amex a lot, and just because it has good points and good benefits. But there's some. I think the Discover is the first one we added her to, because Discover would pull on hers if I set her up. I think there's different ways to set her up, but the way I set her up, it would pull. And so I added her on that one. We'd never use Discover, except for like once a year I'll go buy something small so they don't turn it off.
Yeah, exactly. Keep it going. Yeah. But so you would want to add your kid as an authorized user, get them a card of their own. And then what my dad did for me was just on the installment loan side, he'd go get like a small installment loan and then pay it off. And then just so that it would have kind of a 10% of your score is your mix of history or your mix of credit. So having revolving and installment versus just one or the other.
Okay.
But he also added me like as a co-signer on one of his cars. And so I was 18. I was driving his previous truck that had been paid off. That was kind of was actually my second car. But so I had that. He went and got a new truck. He added me as a co-signer on it. And so that I had that history. So it wasn't, 3-4 years later that I bought my first car, but I don't even know back then how long ago this was, if I was doing like monitoring, like, not Credit Karma, but sites like that we all, use a lot more often now. It wasn't as common, but when they pulled my credit, I think they were pretty surprised, at what they saw, but it was a lot of piggybacking off of my dad and setting me up that way. And so I often joke, and I'm pretty serious, I would say that that's the next best thing you can do for your kids, other than paying for student loans or school, is setting them up with good credit, because right out of the gate, my interest rate on my first car being low versus what it would be for any other person starting from
my
scratch.
first car, I think I got it when I was 18 or 19. My mom gave me a car, and we ran it out. I mean, it just got to the point where it was scrap. And I was like, oh, I guess I need to buy a car. And so I went and bought a car, and I think I had like a 14 or 16% interest rate. And it wasn't really an option. Like that's what it had to be, and it ended up being okay. And then after that, my interest rate kept getting lower and lower and lower.
But like and that's normal. That's just the way it goes. And so when I got the interest rate that I got, I that's why I think they were surprised, because I was, I don't know, 21 or 20 or something like that.
Who are you?
Yeah, and then but put that 14% versus the 0.9 you get now
on a car. It's insane.
That money now for you as a homeowner, you could use that extra money as a rental property or whatever the case may be. But for somebody who's renting, just knowing this information and going, I'm going to make sure I get the 0.9. That is your down payment. That gets you in the game as far as, becoming a homeowner, which is the best investment, right now that you can make. But those are just little things, that I try to talk to people about, because that's the difference.
Well,
right
the other
there.
side on that high interest rate on a car is you're paying it down slower. So you're and the car goes down in value. 99% of car, unless you're into really high end cars, and then this isn't your conversation, but cars go down in value. And so if the lower your interest rate is, the more principal you pay on the loan immediately. And every payment you have it's like we have nice cars, but I pay hundreds of dollars a year in interest, which is tiny considering that what cars cost these days. And all that, because it's all going towards principal. So every time we get a new update, it's like, oh, your value's going, or your principal's going down significantly. And so when you have the higher interest, you have negative equity. You have a larger percentage of negative equity in that car for a longer period of time. It's going to take you to way longer. And chances are, if you have the bad credit, you're buying a cheaper car, hopefully. You're staying within what you can afford, and that car might not last that 6 years. Or, I think they're doing 8-year loans right now on some cars.
So many people that are upside down because they had to trade in, roll in negative equity.
And in the car, they're buying an inexpensive car that, and inexpensive is relative, but you might be buying a $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 car, and it might not last that 6 years. So what if your car breaks, or what if it has a catastrophic repair?
Let me give you an example. I had a client. It was in January. I still remember this because it was sad, and I felt bad for this person. She had issues in the past with, lose a job, car get repossessed, or a divorce, car get so she had a couple on there. She got a car, credit scores were low, so she around a 20% interest rate.
Oh my God! And
it was, I think, a 72-month was the term of the loan. What the car was valued at was, I think, $21,000, but she was going to end up paying over $40,000, like $46,000 or 40-something thousand by the time it was all paid off. She had gotten to like $35,000 paid on this car, the car that she bought for $21,000, and then lost her job and had to turn in the car. So she paid like nearly $15,000 more than what somebody with good credit would have paid. And still got a repossession, and it put her further behind. And so that's kind of to your point. The car was so upside down anyway, as far as what she owed versus what it was worth, and it's just a high risk. It's exposure, because everything kind of has to go perfect, or the best case scenario is you're gonna roll in negative equity into the next car with the high interest rate and continue that, to continue that process.
Yeah, that's insane. I didn't know they go up. Is there a limit on auto loans?
I have no idea. I've seen 20%.
Insane. I remember when I got 12 or 14 or whatever, I was like, can y'all do better? He goes, you don't have any credit, or whatever it was. It was just, and I didn't. I had probably a Best Buy credit card, and
that's a whole nother conversation with some of these dealerships, because they don't always give people. You really, really ought to push. They don't always give you the best rate that is available to you, and that's
because they can
a whole nother.
They typically have a swing in number of points that they can swing. But again, it's like, y'all are approving me for this car. I need a car.
Yeah, people are just happy to get approved.
I was not super educated at the time, and I was between a rock and a hard place. Like, we were shopping this time. We were shopping for more of a long-term car. We're like, okay, we're gonna have kids. We're gonna we need more room, and we've had smaller cars. The car that we bought for my wife is an SUV, and so we're looking at bigger cars. We're thinking, okay, long-term, and we're going around, and we ended up buying a BMW, because BMW they're clearly buying down their rates to sell their cars. And so if you did a 5 year, so we did a 5 year, so it's a little bit tighter. You pay it off quicker. You get positive equity quicker, and anyways, you get positive equity quicker, and it was 0.9. And we were looking at some places that, like we looked at a Yukon, and the Yukons, the new body Yukon was, and normally you can get 10 grand off of those. They didn't have any in inventory. They're like, oh, we don't have any incentives on these. And their interest rates were like 5%. Well, the credit union we typically go with, it was also 4.5 or 5%. And so it was just insane that, and I'm like, okay, so number one, as soon as you catch them on inventory in these Yukons, they're all going to be 10 grand off, because that's how those big trucks sell. And so we're going to lose all that. And then we're having 5% versus 0.9%. So that's also a problem. And those were A++ rates. I'm like, what? I was like, this truck that's already more expensive than what we bought is going to be catastrophically more expensive, moving forward. And so, but we had the options. We had the flexibility of going, are we going to go here? Are we going to go here? Are we going to go here? Because of credit and, other things like that. But man,
yeah,
I mean,
and just knowing, what rates are available, what you can get, and stuff like that, and just making sure that.
And it's a newer car. We don't we got like the extended warranty stuff, so we're never gonna have an issue with it. If there's an issue, it's not going to cost us anything. And so if we drive it up to, I think, 75,000 miles, so it gives you that more flexibility. So I'm never having to go stranded on the side of the road and going, I need to replace my whatever part of the car, and it's it's a BMW, so it's going to be expensive. It's just I mean it's
that's good.
Yeah, cars are insane.
Cars are. That's a good.
Cars are so expensive
people
nowadays too.
Are so addicted to getting that new car, but a car would be the main kind of downfall in somebody's financial success. Just the need to get car after car, not care what your interest rate is, roll over negative equity, always have a car payment. There's a lot of things that I do agree with Dave Ramsey on. I don't have a car payment. My wife has a low interest rate on a new car that she got, and she, is one of those deals where it's so low you can't not do it. But I just see so many people, I don't want to say be too dramatic here and say ruin your life, but the trajectory is just drastically different between a 5% and a 0.9% or a 14%. What you can do with that money if you're thinking like that, where can you invest that money? What can you use it for? College, weddings that you might have to pay for one day for your kids, things like that, retirement, down payment on a house. It literally will change your whole life. A car. You're so excited about the new car that came out because it had a heated seats or something like that, and that's what's keeping you from way better things.
I love cars, and we put a lot of miles on our cars. My wife puts a lot of miles on our car. I do the same, and so we're in a spot now where we're always gonna have a payment, because it's just once you get to a car that's 80,000, 100,000 miles, the expenses become more, the stuff starts breaking, and we just don't want to deal with that. And so we just kind of took it. It's just, it's kind of a living expense. It's like your mortgage payment or something like that. So I look at it a little bit different. And I'm not saying one of us is right or wrong. It's
I'm agreeing
different
with you.
Categories.
It's two different categories, because it's, if you can comfortably afford whatever that payment is, you probably don't look at a car payment as like, if I lost my job tomorrow, I'm going to have to turn these in.
Correct.
You're good for a while. You'll be able to bounce back, versus someone not in that position. Don't let the car be the thing.
Oh no.
But no, I agree with you 100%. I think that, we'll probably always have at least one car payment, because again, with rates being so low, why not? And the Dave Ramsey approach of always pay cash, well, that kind of affects your lifestyle a little bit, because you're not going to always be able to get the BMWs, the Yukons, and things like that, because you couldn't justify paying $65,000 or something like that. Why would you wouldn't do that? So no, I agree with you 100%. It's just that maybe the crowd that I was referring to would be somebody
when you're getting started.
You're keeping up with the Joneses a little bit, and everybody kind of goes through that.
And you probably see more of that than I do.
I see a lot of it.
Because people are coming to you for credit help, so you're definitely seeing more of that. But like if you buy like a 3-year-old car, 4-year-old car, that's a really good spot. 3 to 4-year-old car, low mileage. I mean, it's a really good spot to be at with depreciation, because it drops like a rock in 3 years.
I'll give you an example. When COVID started, those new Toyota Tundra trucks came out with 84-month, I think, term, and
kept seeing those.
And so I can't remember what the catch was, what the gimmick was, or something like that. But so many people you see now driving those trucks. Those are the ones I'm talking about of, the new whatever comes out, the new Dodge comes out with the huge screen, or a Tesla comes out, and you're, living in an apartment with $1,300 rent, but your car payment's $1,300. That's kind of more.
We had a neighbor in one of our apartments that he drives up in a nice truck. And I'm thinking, what does this guy do? His payment was, and he's like, oh yeah, I had to, go in and upgrade. He was one of those people that just have to upgrade. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, what are you doing?
I'm not here to tell people, like, if it makes you happy, I'm not here to tell people, but it's like, it's the ones who are like, live in an apartment going, I'd love to buy a house, but I just can't afford a down payment. And you're like, yes, you can.
Yeah. Well, and there's even down payment assistance programs that don't even cost you anything. Like the lender that I use all the time, he's got these programs. It's like, oh yeah, it's free money. I'm like, how? And he goes, it just is. I'm like, what? Huh? He goes, it is. This is how it works, and yada,
surprising.
yada, and
the income requirements too are a lot higher than you would think.
Some of them go to $100,000.
Yeah. And
like,
so when I started hearing that, I'm like, wait a minute.
Really?
Yeah.
I was talking to this probably a couple of years ago, but I was working with a client, and we were just talking about this down payment because they didn't have the cash. And I think there's a couple of catches, if you will, but it's like your interest rate is slightly higher. But again, that interest rate of being slightly higher, it's still going to outpace your the house is going up in value, interest rates potentially going. It's going to outpace just about anything. And a lot of these, if you're in the house long enough, you don't have to pay them back.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh yeah, unfortunately these clients don't qualify because their income's too high. And I'm like, oh okay.
Darn it!
It was $100,000.
Yeah,
like $100,000. Like if you make less than $100,000, and again, you have to talk to my lender because there's a lot of fine print here. But it was a weird conversation. I'm like, that's a lot of money, and you can get anyway. So it's
there's one like T-Shack, I think, is like $75,000 for an individual, and then I don't know, maybe $100,000 for a couple. I'm not a loan officer, so I don't know the exact. But when I heard the numbers, I was like, okay, like that's
a lot of
great.
People are under that.
Yeah, it's not like some ridiculous amount. Like, if you're making $24,000 a year, then you can. It's like it's a normal, fair amount that you can still qualify for them.
So, anything else you wanted to talk about?
I don't know. I do so much credit talking. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm the worst person because the line of what is common knowledge, the Credit Karmas versus the MyFICOs versus what a lender uses.
Let's talk about that. So
we can hit on business credit stuff too if you want.
Yeah, let's do that in a minute. Credit Karma. So I have Credit Karma, and then some of my credit cards have like a place where you can look at the credit. They're all different, and they're obviously not accurate. Like I know what my Credit Karma was, and then when they ran our credit for Tiffany's car. They came back and they showed it to me like, whoa, like that's a lot higher than what I've seen anywhere else. And it's because they run a different formula. So talk about how like you can use it. I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't use it because I know some things Credit Karma will tell you to do something, but if you do that, it's actually going to be derogatory when it thinks it's going to be positive.
Just with their specific scoring model. So I'll try to break it all down as quick as I can. So imagine me and you went in separate rooms right now and they said, come up with your own scoring model, meaning how much should a late payment hurt somebody's score? How much should maxed out credit cards hurt someone's score? How much should an inquiry hurt somebody's score? All of the things that impact your score. Me and you would come up with different answers. There's no way we'd be dead, the same. Just like McDonald's and Burger King are two different things, even though they're, so there's so many different scoring models. And so lenders, whether it's an auto loan or a mortgage loan or anything like that, just use different scoring models. Credit Karma and some of the other sites like that are way off. So it's apples and oranges. Whereas, an iPhone, they come out with a new model all the time. It's still an iPhone. So like there's FICO scores and they come out with new FICO scores and they change things a little bit. But then there's also Vantage scores. And so that's like you got an app, an iPhone and an Android, just two totally different things. Okay. And so the way that Credit Karma scores the same stuff on your credit report's your credit report. We all have credit report, TransUnion, Equifax, Experian, report your accounts. Where the credit score comes from is relative to where you go apply or where you go pull your credit report, what score they stick to it. And so Credit Karma just looks at things totally different than any lender does. And so But also within FICO scores, whether you're going to apply for a car or a house, they have an industry specific scorecard that they'll throw on top of that general FICO scoring model. So they all look at your payment history, your amounts owed, your credit card balances, things like that, your length of history inquiries. But then like with an auto loan scorecard, they would weigh your previous auto history more heavily than they would if you're going to go apply for a mortgage, if that makes sense. And so
I've heard that I'm in this whole car wholesale group, and it's like a lot of high end cars, which is probably dangerous to my finances. But they want to see that if you want to go out and get a Ferrari that's, I don't know, $4,000 or something, whatever they cost. Obviously, I haven't quoted it because that's not in the budget, but they want to see that you're comfortable with those higher payments. And that never even crossed my mind. Like they're going to go, are they going from a $600 payment to a $3,000 payment? Then we're going to be a little more sketched out if he's going from a $1,500 payment to a $3,000 payment.
So it's almost like if you think about insurance underwriting, you know, you're going to look at
your credit impacts your insurance rates too. That's a new thing to me, because I knew they looked at it, but it never crossed my mind that you calculate that in like the cost of having a bad credit score, what it's going to cost you over.
Well, think about it like interest rates. Why do some people have better interest rates and some people have worse? It's like, you know, depending on the risk, that's why they would do it. So same thing with insurance. It's more about how likely is somebody to pay their premiums, you know? And so, so
I guess that makes sense.
Your payment history, you know, impacts, you know, so are you a higher risk to that insurance company of not, you know, paying your premiums and things like that? And so, but with, I'm trying to think back to what with like Credit Karma using a different scoring model, things that you can do like pay off a collection or pay down credit card balances, or how much do medical collections impact your score? They just chose to make that totally different. And so if you're trying to build your credit and you're using Credit Karma as kind of your guide, that is a situation where you could end up doing things that would cause your FICO scores, what lenders use, to go down. And so that industry-specific scorecard, the reason why I mention that is because if you own or if you're a part of a certain industry and you're trying to decide if somebody's going to get approved or denied for what you're offering, you want to know, like you said, specific to this situation, are they a good fit? You know, like
that's interesting. That's something I never even knew. I knew it's like the dots are connecting now because I just read that on that.
I was talking to a guy. He's a real estate investor and he has a lot of renters. And he was telling me he doesn't even really look at someone's credit report to determine if he's going to let them lease a place. He will get a list of like the last few places that they've lived, and he'll call and talk to them. And that's what he cares about. If they have good rental history.
Yeah, he didn't care if they pay their car bill.
It doesn't matter. It's like for the past 2 years, they've been perfect on their rental history. That's good enough for me. And I would, at being in the credit industry, I would want to look at a credit report.
Yeah. But
all he cared about was, do they pay their rent? And so they do these industry-specific scorecards. And so for an auto loan, if you have previous good auto history, that score would be higher than even if you had phenomenal scores because you had credit cards and maybe a mortgage. If you never had a car in your name before, you're going to get a higher interest rate on that auto loan.
Interesting. And Tiff and I have had a lot of cars.
Yeah. So that's 0.9. That's probably 0.9 is pretty darn good.
That's probably helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. That is really interesting. Yeah, because when I was reading on that forum, I think it was a video. I think it was on YouTube, some car hacker dude, and he was just saying if you want to eventually get into these higher end cars and you're going to finance them, because some of the higher end cars actually go up in value, or you can drive them for a year and sell them for what you break even. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So that's like another pocket that I didn't know existed. Obviously, I don't know a bunch about it, but it was saying that you need don't go from a $300 payment. Like you might want to get into a higher payment to eventually get into even higher payment, so that you can show them that, hey, they're when they pull you, they're like, oh, they have some payments a little bit closer to this bonkers car that you end up financing. So, but talk about business credit, because I think that's one of the things that it obviously impacts a certain type of client, but. Talk about how business credit, I think you were mentioning that getting credit moved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'll give an example. So just to kind of bring it to a real world situation, I got a call, it's been a couple years ago, from a realtor, and he wanted me to come up to their office, and he said, I need help with my credit. I got some issues. I'm going to pull my credit report. I want to show you. Other than everything on his credit report is perfect, except for he had about 12, I would say, houses that were financed, all of them. And he was a real estate investor. So he owned 12 properties around the Dallas area. And there were just late payments all over these 12 properties because his renter's just not paying. And then,
he didn't have the money.
And he wasn't going to be able to pay all of them. And so it's like on paper, this guy's a multimillionaire because these are all 100, 200, 300, a couple bigger ones that, the amount that was owed, it was far less than what, the original amount was. So if he sold them all right now, he'd be in great shape. But he doesn't want to. He loves them. He called his houses his babies. Like he didn't. It wasn't about that for him. He wanted the houses, and he's also a softie with his renters. So that's a problem. They're all on his personal credit. He couldn't even finance a car. He wanted to buy a Tesla. Makes decent money, but he's not going to be able to pay rent for everybody. But he couldn't. He couldn't buy a Tesla. This was back when they kind of came out, and that was his goal, was to get a Tesla.
Yeah.
But he was soft on his renters. They were missing payments, late payments scattered all over his credit report. And so my first thought was, this guy's a millionaire on paper, but he's never going to be able to do anything because of this. And then that's when it hit me. This guy needs to get these. This is a business. He has a real estate investment. He's a business. He needs to get these properties off of his personal credit report and put them on his business credit report. So you have a personal credit report, that your social is attached to. So you go apply for something, it's on your personal credit. You also have an EIN number as a business that you can build business credit. It's easier to build business credit than it is to build personal credit.
And we need to talk about that too. Yeah, because
I'll talk to you about how it works. It's totally different than personal credit, but it's easier and quicker to be able to do that. Number one, once you build business credit, you can get a lot bigger lines of credit. So revolving accounts, installment loans, lines of credit that you can go back to. But you're taking all of that debt off your personal credit report and putting it on your business credit report. Okay. So now your DTI is good. You at risk of anything happening to your business, you're personally okay. We've heard about like big billionaires, one of their businesses filing bankruptcy. Well, they're just, we all, there's lots of, it happens. They're wiping their hands and they're walking away. They're just fine.
But even small business owners do that.
Yeah, no, anybody. I'm just using an example of somebody or
they're the ones that get hit in the media.
Exactly. But it's very common and normal, but when it's all under the business, that didn't affect them personally. It's not a good thing. You don't want that to happen. So I say, God forbid, if something happened to your business, it's not going to ruin your personal credit. Yeah. So you move all of that over to your business credit. Your DTI is good. You can now go buy a house or a car, whatever you want to do. But if something happened to your business, your personal credit's fine. And you just have a lot more options on the business credit side. So we wanted to get all of those mortgages under his EIN under his business. So he sets up an LLC, he gets an EIN number, you get a DUNS number, Dun and Bradstreet, and then you have business credit reports and business credit scores, and you just build it to a certain point where you can get loans, business credit cards that aren't attached to your social at all. And so, because in some cases when you're first getting started, you'll have to personally guarantee a business loan or business credit card.
It won't go on your, it separates.
It won't go on your credit report unless you screw up. And then it will. But what you want to do is you want to eventually get to where when you fill out an application for something, you don't put your social on it at all. Yeah, you put your EIN.
You're signing on behalf of the business.
Think about Walmart. Like they're not personally guaranteed. They have like hundreds of trade lines with vendors. They're not personally guaranteeing any of that stuff.
Well, it's when you go and rent a space, you have the quality of in commercial. When you rent, it's someone like Toyota versus some no-name, whatever company. Whether you have Toyota or some startup car company. The startup car company, their credit, if you will, to that landlord that's going to be renting that space is a lot lower than if you're Toyota. It's like, I'm not worried about them paying rent. We're willing to give them a lower rent and a better rate because they're very low risk compared to other companies.
Yeah. And just, obviously we all know a lot of the stats on starting a business. It's hard. Having the ability to use that is sometimes the difference between your business making it and not making it. You can weather a storm, you can buy inventory, you can finance inventory, because there's net 30, 60, 90 terms. So, and sometimes if you needed to buy inventory for your business, you can basically put that on account for 90 days. And then once it's all sold, then you can pay it back. Think about like a small restaurant getting started, having to buy all the food, all the things they have to buy. Well, they want to be able to get all of that in, make the money off of it, and then pay off, versus just, floating that themselves on personal credit.
And that's huge, because if you're making a 30% profit on something, but you're paying 10% interest on the loan, then, it should be a wash. Like you're making, and most companies are leveraged. Most companies use debt to, I don't know if I should be saying this, but I worked for Lifetime Fitness for a long time, and they were a highly leveraged company, and so they used debt to buy things.
Yeah.
And so, but I just knew that company more than most. How they run things, I don't know anymore because they've kind of reorganized. But it's like I think they would buy a building cash, and then they'd basically then they would finance it or something like that.
They'd rent it to themselves.
Yeah, I think they might have done that. Anyways, but it was just but it's smart. I mean, it's just a smart way of doing things. And if it's like the whole I think tax stuff comes out, and not getting into politics, but Trump's tax thing came out recently, and everyone was up. I was like, if he's not breaking the law, and I'm not saying I'm a supporter, I'm not, but it's just he was very high profile for it, and if he's not breaking the law and he's using these tax codes
and
properly,
a lot of people are doing it.
I personally know a lot of people doing what
especially
he did
in real estate.
Yeah, and we
With
the way we set up,
depreciation
the way we set up our intricate business too is all legal, and it's all within the tax code, and we save money from doing that. One of the things that people don't realize is being self-employed. I pay more taxes by being self-employed. Like I pay self-employed taxes.
Yeah.
Like it's working for a company. So we don't need to get into that, but it's there's a lot of I don't know where I was going with that, but it's
just on the lines of business credit, and no, I agree with you 100%. There's so many things that you can do on that side, and you should do. And the people that are maybe bashing that just because they know that the tax law is set up that way, for a reason.
Well, then change the tax code. If enough people, it's just like whether you vote somebody
in. We don't tell Jeff Bezos. We're not getting onto some of those people that are doing that are doing the same thing.
Well, I think Amazon, and every year, I guess they publicly have to announce the taxes they paid or something. I don't know how it works, but every year, it's almost I see, they paid no taxes. They paid no taxes. Well, they've lost money for a long, long time, and if you can write off a loss. So if you're not making anyway, so like I guess the gist of this is business credit's pretty cool because that's something clearly I didn't know a bunch about. I knew a little bit about it, but you're saying it's easier to build in personal credit. I clearly need to work on that. But secondly, educate yourself about this stuff because and hire professionals, whether it's credit repair or it's an accountant or it's CPA or it's an attorney that's related to business growth and starting up a business. I actually have an attorney for that, and it's just it'll save you so much money. I didn't build. I think 2019 was the first year that I set up my LLC and S corp because I had an accountant CPA that I started in real estate with, and he's like, "Oh, until you get to this number, it doesn't make sense." Well, my accountant now, she goes, "Oh, you should have done that years ago," and I'm like, "Excuse me."
Accountants are not all created equal.
I'm like, God, and so like the amount that I paid in the years that I didn't have an S corp and an LLC was extraordinary. Because then a year or quarterly or however you want to do it, I pay taxes. No one takes the taxes out of my money. I write really, really large checks to pay, and it's not pleasant.
Yeah.
And the amount that I mean, it was just, I'm like, are you kidding me? And so, and the number that he gave me was a really high number. He's like, once you get here, then it makes sense to do an S corp and LLC. And she's like, no, if you're at I think it was like $30,000 a year or something low. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, I've been above that for a long time. Like, are you kidding me?
I know. That's a whole subject. Yeah. I mean, same thing for us. We went to a different accountant. She actually went back and amended some previous years.
Really?
Because it was, we just we were overpaying big time. And so, yeah.
And mine was more on how our taxes were structured versus
if you're
errors in past time.
1099 self-employed versus if you're an LLC S corp and you pass through, then you're looking at, if you're doing dividend checks and stuff like that and you have a salary, you're going to pay much less, Yeah. I'm helping y'all's firewall office. Everybody in that office right now is setting up business credit. We're doing like a whole class. We did a whole class, and I'm walking everybody through. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, because it's, and that's another thing that I know a lot of real estate agents watch my videos too because I see y'all commenting and texting me. But, that's one of the things that, and whether you're, you own a ghost kitchen. Ghost kitchens are coming out. You know what a ghost kitchen is?
No
it's
idea.
A kitchen that has no retail location. It's just a kitchen, and they basically deliver stuff. It's going to be they think it's going to have a high growth. It's going to be a really high growth industry moving forward because you can essentially you don't have anyone coming in. You're making gourmet food, you're making high end food, and it gets delivered or it shows up at your house or whatever. So
we've lived off Grubhub and Uber Eats lately. So
I think is it Grubhub or one of those companies is about to go IPO. I'm like, okay,
That's a good one to watch.
yeah. And then Airbnb, I think, is going IPO this month. But it's, whether you're running a ghost kitchen or you're running a real estate team or whatever it is, there's tons of tax advantages out there. There's tons of there's the tons of advantages out there, and having experts that can
set up as a business.
educate you and interview multiple people. See
just
who
think about
works
this
for you.
year of all years. Hopefully, we don't deal with anything like this again. But if you had business credit set up this year as a small business, your chance of making it through weathering the storm so much better than if you were just a cash business, because when you're out of cash, you're out of cash. You got to fire employees quicker. You can't continue that on if money's not coming in. But if you know that you were highly profitable restaurant or whatever the case may be pre-COVID, and you just got to float it for 6 months, and you have credit, and established relationships that you can use, that is the difference between shutting down and staying open.
And it's huge. And that's what, I remember one point we were driving around and I was just looking at all these small restaurants, these mom and pop restaurants. I'm like, my God, so many of these are going to be gone. Because I know how painful it's been for a lot of people that I know that are, working for themselves or have their own business or whatever. And so it's crazy. Well, the other thing I was going to say is I was talking to a client of mine that, they make good money. He's an employee. And we were just talking about like taxes and advantages. They're like, as an employee, you have very little opportunity to be strategic, other than, donating and things like that. But you're giving money away. So it's the same thing, but you have, as an employee, you have very little ability to take advantage of these things. And I'm a big proponent in, starting a side gig, taking that side gig and moving.
Real estate investing would be a good example of one. If you're an employee and you're making good income, you're getting killed. I have a friend that does medical device sales, so he gets a really good salary, but he gets huge bonus checks, but they freaking tax the heck. Yeah. So he's buying real estate all over the place right now, because that's just one way. He set up an LLC, and so you can put a lot of money in that, and so there's advantages there. But yeah, I've seen that too.
And and anyway, so at the beginning of all this, I'm like, now everyone has all this time on their hands. Start a side gig, turn your side gig into something that makes decent money, and eventually take it over. And then if you're working for yourself and you're self-employed, you obviously have the emotional side of that's really cool and nice. And then you have the other side where you have these advantages where you can business credit and taxes and income and being strategic about things. I mean, buying assets that you might have a company that buys one asset that company A takes a loan out for an asset, and the loan's from company B, and then company C rents the asset from company A. I mean, it's just
those are the things that really fascinate me when I see like real estate owners that I have an example of one where the wife might work for a company that needs this service, and just being able to take advantage of it from those angles, but also starting a business that's a sellable asset. If you business credit makes your business so much more of a sellable or valuable asset, because when you are buying into a business that has, an online presence, good reviews, and then available credit, that is so much more valuable than not having that. And so obviously, with the Coldwell Banker owners, I just went through, something like that. And that makes a big difference between, why wouldn't we just use our resources to start our own? Why do we need,
what if we just,
this? Why can't I just go recreate this? Like Kevin O'Leary says on Shark Tank, why can't I just, put this $200,000 towards starting your business and squish you like the bug that you are or whatever? Well, one thing would be, I have a lot of things already established that are going to take you a lot of time to get,
That's a really good point. And I imagine business credit age is similar to personal credit, right? If you have 20 years on business credit versus, 2
and just
years.
The more trade lines that you're able to establish and open on business credit is helpful. And it is a process. You can't go straight to getting an Amex Platinum business card that's not attached to your social. You can't get that tomorrow. But if you open up a Quill account or a Uline account or a Staples account, you can build, once you get to a certain amount of trade lines,
they'll give you a net 30, net 60 kind of thing.
And you build up your business credit score, your paydex score, and then you're able to go to the Amexes.
There's so many things that I'm thinking of right now. because we're always looking for, real estate's obviously the breadwinner. It's what pays the bills. But we're always looking at, what else can we do? Like what else? Not that I have a ton of time, but it's just like, what else can we do? What else can we grow? What else can we, obviously, the Apex owners understood the value in buying a part of your company. And so that obviously it's going to go both ways. What do we have that's real estate related? What do we have that's maybe not real estate related?
The way that you would do a side hustle is you don't want to get into something you don't know anything about. But Coldwell Banker owners thought, okay, we just ran the numbers and saw that we closed X amount more houses because of this, and so if we can get involved.
What if we turn the volume up on that?
Let me give you an example of a business that I'm looking at buying and why.
Yeah.
We spend a fortune on stamps, paper, envelopes, ink, all that stuff. We send out all these letters, thousands of letters, and for our clients all the time. And that's one of our biggest expenses, believe it or not, are stamps and all that kind of stuff. We have to buy tons of it.
Yeah, that wouldn't even cross my mind.
I was just looking online and I saw one of those mail and shipping stores online for sale at a good price. The guy's retiring, he's wanting to get out of it, and he gets discounts buying in bulk on all this stuff. And so I thought, if I buy this business that's already profitable, I get a discount on all these things that I have to have anyway, but basically the general public is paying for it because as they come in for their services that they need, that profit I'm using to pay for expenses that I already have, but now I'm getting them at a discount. It's a win all the way around. It's a profitable business. It benefits my current business. And the general public is paying, for that. Another one would be like for the Apex owners, if they owned like a printing shop or they did business cards and all that kind of stuff, that could benefit, they could discount their agents, give them a big discount on all the marketing materials and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then it could be open to anybody. So anybody outside of Apex agents are paying for them to be able to give you a discount, which already benefits their core business anyway.
Yeah.
So just kind of using your main business as, and doing something parallel with that.
Yeah. See, that's what we're always kind of like. We're always looking at stuff that, what can, looking for opportunities, So no, that's cool. That's it. Hopefully these are, striking, people are watching me out the window, so I got a little distracted. No, but it's just, that's the kind of like mindset that I'm trying to get more of is looking for those opportunities and grabbing those opportunities, and also set, some those opportunities. If you wouldn't have set yourself up and built a successful business, you wouldn't have the money to be able to even have an option to buy another business. So that's, the other side. And, so.
Yeah. If you look at the Apex owners, their core business is so successful that with all the clients that they're helping, they could add so much value to them in so many other areas. They could be creating other extremely successful businesses all because of the one they've done such a good job of, and that still blows my mind. And I'm a little jealous, to be honest, because it's like they've done such a good job with this business. They could be beating this business just because of how good this one is. And so
true. Yeah. Because the amount of, I don't know how much real estate we sell a year. I probably should know that. And they probably tell me that every year, but it's a lot. It's an enormous, there's like 800 agents or something and most of them are in North Texas.
Yeah.
I think it's the third largest brokerage in like quantity, like dollar amount of sales in North Texas. It's just, which I didn't know till like a few days ago, but it's just an enormous amount of business. And if you're going, okay, now we have a moving company, now we have a title, and they don't, but I'm just saying this.
They're so busy with real estate.
You think about, all these other businesses that support the core business and vice versa, like the credit company. It's just is cool. So, well, we got on a tangent, but hopefully y'all learned some things.
Value.
I appreciate you coming in. I appreciate your time today. Hope this was helpful. And again, Dane, how can they contact you if they have?
Yeah, so you can go to lenderschoicecreditsolutions.com, lendersccs.com. I can post my number. Depending on where this is being posted, I can post my number. But if you just go to Lender's Choice Credit Solutions, if you Google us, you can get my direct scheduler link, and I can reach out. I was going to say, just on that note, we covered so many different things. It's because everybody's situation's different, and the most valuable thing we do is a free consultation, because specific to what somebody's needs are, that's the route we kind of need to tailor the game plan to.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to get on here now and say, get a credit card or don't get a credit card or don't.
Yeah.
One bit of advice might be great for somebody, but not the best possible thing for the next person to do. And so take advantage of the free consultation just so based on your specific needs, you can get from point A to point B and be efficient about it and not overspend or take too much time.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have a video. I don't know if it'll be out before or after this, but it's just talking about marketing a house. Everything's custom. Like the way we market houses, everything's custom. There's no two houses that we do the same. And it's because some houses need this, some houses need that. Some houses, the seller's not going to have to spend any money. Some houses, like a client, $200,000 house, spent about $10,000 getting it ready. But then I have a client that has a $570,000 house that spent $0. And so it's just everything is so custom to what what it is, and that's the benefit of working with either one of us, is to understand what you need, because you learned about the credit, like maybe there's something that looks like it would be a positive by paying something off, and it's not. Like when I was getting a loan, he's like, it was like $200, and he's like, don't touch that.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, sir.
And what I say to the clients that we talk to about this, about just the benefit of the free consultation, it's not that I always see people that are doing the wrong thing, like, oh no, don't do that. That happens, but it's more of they're doing technically the something that is getting them along, and they are seeing some improvement in their score. It's just not the quickest and the cheapest. I hardly ever say, oh, you need to be spending way more money to get your scores up. It's usually that they're just doing other things that are, it's fine. It's just not the best thing to be doing. And so that is, I think the big benefit of our free consultation is let's literally look at your situation and go, what is the fastest way to get from here to here, the quickest and the cheapest? Do this, don't do this, that sort of thing. And we do those all day long, regardless whether they need or sign up for our services or not. But I just know that if I were, knowing what I know now, if I were in that position, the free consultation is more valuable, I hate to say it, than the service we actually charge for, because there's so much more than just credit repair that can be done. You know that. You and I talked. You didn't need credit repair. You just or if you're doing everything perfectly, just having that confidence. Because what I see with renters, I do so many home buyer seminars, and what I see with renters are hesitation due to not knowing. Yeah. Should I pay this off? Should I do this? And they just kind of hesitate.
Well, if you wait 6 months, like not buying a house, it's like you wait 6 months, that house can be more expensive. Yeah. If you wait, that's a newer thing that you do to your credit versus if you did it, years ago. Like I think I got my first card at 18.
Yeah.
And so my credit started then. Yeah. Versus it starting at 28.
Yeah. And procrastination isn't always because of laziness. A lot of times it's just uncertainty, and fear of the unknown. Am I going to do all this? Am I going to pay off this account and it not help? I heard something about paying off collections not bad or not good, but I also heard someone did it. Like, then you just kind of halt. And then I don't want to call a credit repair company because they're going to charge me $1 million. Doing the free consultation, knowing what to do and what not to do is what's going to get you excited about taking action, because the number one good review we hear and get is, oh my gosh, that was so much easier than I thought it was going to be.
I agree. I mean, it's in credit's just, it's one of those things that I think credit has a lot about, it depends a lot on how you grow up. What did your parents do? Did your parents have good credit? Did he talk to you about credit? Did they not talk to you about credit? Did they have bad credit? Did they get those catalogs? I remember the first time I ever saw one of those catalogs, and everything was by monthly payment. You ever seen one of those catalogs?
Yeah. Because you're like, I can afford the $19.99 a month or whatever.
Oh, you can add this to your monthly payment or whatever. And it's just, so I think it depends on how you grow up. That has a lot to do with it, but there's no reason that, whether you grew up with no credit, education, with very poor credit and low income, you can still have a really good credit score. And it's so powerful, and it'll save you money, and it will cost you nothing if you get educated on it. So, and
don't assume that your situation's unfixable. I have people, can you help me? I'm like, no, this is the worst I've ever seen. Of course I can. This is, it's nothing compared to the worst we've ever seen. Everybody's just so, like you said, it can be embarrassing or uncomfortable to talk about, but there is no situation that we haven't seen, a lot. And just don't miss out on opportunity because you think that you're that one in a 300 million whose situation's unfixable. Of course it's fixable.
Yeah. And you got to start, the earlier you start, the quicker you can start rolling, higher credit score and start fixing things. So, cool. Well, I appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much.
Me, and I'll talk to you guys later.
Yeah,
Bye.
Thanks.